I'm standing in my kitchen holding a birthday card with shaky handwriting that reads, "Happy birthday, Emma. Love, Margaret," my mother-in-law. After 15 years of silence, she finally wrote my name, and it broke something inside me I didn't know was still whole. I stare at the words until they blur. My husband David walks in, sees my face, and immediately knows. He doesn't say anything. He just wraps his arms around me while I try to remember how to breathe. Because for 15 years, I was invisible to her, not worthy of her words, not worthy of her days. And now, suddenly, I exist. It started the first time I met her. David had warned me she was particular. I thought I understood. I wore a simple dress, brought homemade apple pie, practiced my smile in the car mirror. But when we walked through her door, Margaret looked at me the way you'd look at a stain on white carpet. She shook my hand, briefly, coldly, then turned to David. "You didn't tell me she was so young." I was 26. David was 29. "Mom, come on," he said gently. She ignored him, moving into the kitchen without another glance my way. Throughout dinner, she spoke only to David, asked about his work, his health, his plans. When I tried to compliment her roast, she simply nodded and changed the subject. I told myself it was nerves, first impressions. She'd warm up. But she never did. The second visit was worse. I'd brought flowers this time, white roses, because David said they were her favorite. She took them without looking at me, set them on the counter, and walked away. "Did I do something wrong?" I whispered to David later. He looked exhausted. "She's like this with everyone at first. Just give her time." But time didn't help. At family gatherings, she'd arrange photos, David's childhood pictures, his graduation, holidays, and somehow I was never asked to be in them. She'd call David every Sunday and talk for an hour. If I answered the phone, she'd say, "Is David there?" and wait in silence until he picked up. Once, at Thanksgiving, I offered to help in the kitchen. She said, "I have everything under control," and turned her back. I felt like a ghost in her home, present but unseen. The breaking point came at David's birthday party, 3 years into our marriage. Margaret had invited his friends, his cousins, even neighbors. She'd baked his favorite cake, hung decorations, made all his childhood favorites. But when she gave the toast, she said, "To my son who's always made me proud, no matter what changes come into his life." The way she said "changes" felt like a slap. I excused myself to the bathroom and cried quietly, wondering why I wasn't enough. What had I done to make her hate me? When I came back, David was arguing with her in hushed tones by the kitchen. I only caught fragments. "Treat her like she doesn't exist. You don't understand. My wife, Mom." That night, David apologized the 100th time. "I'll talk to her again." But I was tired of apologies. I said softly, "Maybe she's right. Maybe I'm not what she wanted for you." "Don't say that." But I believed it. Then something shifted. Margaret stopped coming to family events, stopped calling, stopped everything. David visited her alone. I stayed home, relieved to avoid the tension, but also feeling the weight of failure. Her mother had chosen silence over tolerating me. Years passed this way. We had our daughter Lily. Margaret sent a gift through the mail, a blanket she had knitted, but no card, no visit, no call. When Lily turned 3, she asked, "Do I have a grandma?" David's face fell. "Yes, sweetheart, you do." "Where is she?" He looked at me helpless. I couldn't answer. Then last month, David's aunt called. "Margaret's been in the hospital. She's okay now, but she's been asking about you, Emma." My heart stopped. "About me?" "She wants to see you, both of you." David and I sat in silence after the call. 15 years of nothing, and now this. "You don't have to go," he said. But I did. Because despite everything, I needed to know. Why did she push me away? Why wasn't I ever enough? And maybe, just maybe, why now? We drove to her house on a Sunday afternoon. My hands were shaking when we knocked. David squeezed my fingers. We can leave any time. But when Margaret opened the door, I barely recognized her. She looked smaller, older. Her eyes, once sharp and cold, now seemed tired, sad. "David," she said softly. Then, after a pause that felt like eternity, "Emma." My name in her voice felt surreal. She stepped aside. "Come in." The house looked the same, tidy, quiet, full of memories that didn't include me. But something about the air felt different, heavier. We sat in her living room. She served tea with trembling hands. "Thank you for coming," she said, not looking at either of us. David leaned forward. "Mom, what's going on?"
She took a long breath. "I've been thinking a lot about the past, about mistakes." She finally looked at me. "Emma, I owe you an apology and an explanation." I wasn't ready for what came next. Margaret set down her tea and folded her hands in her lap, like she was steadying herself. "When David first brought you home," she began, "I saw how happy he was, how he looked at you, and it terrified me." I blinked. "Terrified?" She nodded. "David's father left when David was 8. Just walked out one day and never came back. I raised David alone. He was everything to me. My whole world." Her voice cracked slightly. "When you came into his life, I felt like I was losing him. Like I wasn't needed anymore. Like you'd take him away and I'd be forgotten." David's face went pale. "Mom, I would never—" "I know," she said quickly. "I know that now. But back then, I couldn't see past my own fear. Every time I looked at Emma, I saw the woman who was replacing me, and I hated it. I hated feeling that way. So I pulled away." She wiped her eyes. "I thought if I didn't let myself care, it wouldn't hurt when you moved on without me. But instead, I hurt all of us. Especially you, Emma." I didn't know what to say. All these years, I'd thought I was the problem, that I wasn't kind enough, polite enough, good enough. But it was never about me. "You didn't deserve that," Margaret continued, her voice breaking. "You tried so hard. You brought flowers, made pies, smiled even when I was cruel. And I was too proud and too scared to let you in." She reached across the table, her hand hovering near mine. "I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to know it was never you. It was always me." I looked at her hand, wrinkled, shaking, reaching, and slowly I took it. "Why now?" I asked softly. Margaret smiled sadly. "Because I'm getting older. And when I was in that hospital bed, all I could think about was how much time I've wasted. How I never got to know you. How I missed watching Lily grow up." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I don't want to die knowing I pushed away the woman my son loves, the mother of my granddaughter. I don't want that to be my story." David was crying now. So was I. "I want to try," Margaret said, "if you'll let me. I want to know you, Emma. I want to be part of your life. Part of Lily's life." She squeezed my hand. "Can we start over?" I thought about all the years. The hurt, the loneliness, the birthdays and holidays spent feeling invisible. But I also thought about fear, about how it makes people do terrible things, how it builds walls that seem impossible to tear down. And I thought about Lily, who deserved to know her grandmother. "Yes," I said, "we can try." Margaret let out a breath she'd been holding for what seemed like years. It wasn't perfect after that. healing never is. There were awkward moments, stilted conversations, old habits that crept back in. But there were also small breakthroughs. Margaret came to Lily's birthday party. She held my daughter and cried when Lily called her grandma for the first time. She called me one evening just to ask about my day. The conversation was brief, clumsy, but genuine. She even apologized to David separately for putting him in the middle all those years. And slowly, so slowly, the walls came down. One afternoon, months later, Margaret and I sat in her garden while Lily played. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why did you send the birthday card? After all that silence, why then?" She smiled softly. "Because I realized something. Silence doesn't protect you from pain. It just makes it last longer. And I didn't want to spend whatever time I have left in silence. Not anymore." I think about that a lot now. How silence can feel like safety, like protection. But really, it's just another kind of prison. Margaret and I will never get back those 15 years. We can't undo the hurt or erase the distance. But we can build something new, something honest, something real. Because sometimes what looks like rejection is just fear wearing a different face. And sometimes the longest silences hold the deepest love. They're just waiting for someone brave enough to break them. Margaret took that step. And I'm so glad I took one too.